Happy New Year to everyone, and good morning. Gee, here we are, January 2nd, 2019. Left the house this morning, it was 1 degree below zero on my mirror, in the dark at 5 a.m., and my thought was, well, I guess we get to do it again. So this morning, what we're going to wrap up this study, to your surprise. I think
Just do that, we gotta have some kind of a banquet or something.
Yeah.
Graduation.
What is a man? Week 30. I told you, I think I promised you we'd be done at 30 weeks. 30 is a good number. And so we're going to wrap up this morning. And we're going to reference our last time together. You guys had some table time and actually created I gave you some an activity to do, and that's integrated in this last session this morning, and then that'll be actually part of our wrap up. Next week we'll be meeting here. I will be gone next week. I'm going to be attending a conference. And then the following, but we will be meeting. Bill's got the key, and I think, I don't know, we've asked John if he'd consider.
Put him on the spot.
Yeah, doing something. Thanks, John.
I came up with a thought.
I know you will. I know you will. And it'll be a good thought. And then in 2 weeks, we'll start the Gospel of John, and we'll do the introduction next week. In 2 weeks. So. Alrighty, well here we are, and as you've seen this slide time and time again, we are now wrapping up right here in this section. We've already looked at chapters 46 through 49. Again, this is all review. We're looking at the last portion, this time of descent in Jacob's life. Again, and what we've kind of capsulated is that transformation, which is a subject, of course, we're all interested in. It's a subject that we're participating in life, and there's lots of questions around this topic. And what we've dialed in, at least from our perspective, is that being transformed is not about an attainment to some sort of ranking, but rather it's about a dynamic response. Dynamic meaning flexible and moving. It's a dynamic response in real time to a particular occasion and based entirely on trust. We are called, as disciples of Jesus Christ, we are called to a life of trust. And therefore, my capacity to seek and receive grace, it's all about our ability to seek and receive grace. And the idea is that our natural tendency as human beings is that we resist it. We're resisting, and overcoming that through the power of the Holy Spirit is the idea that we can now receive. Seek and receive grace. We've seen this exemplified in the life of Jacob, and it's directly proportional to my ability to let go, release control. And again, guys have said this so many times, that unless I have a place to go, I would never think about releasing control. I've got to believe that there is something larger to catch me if I'm going to let go of that rope. And that, of course, is the promises we have in and through Christ. Our table time last time was chapters 46 through 49. You guys, we divided the tables up to discuss these texts over here. Jacob and his family moved to Egypt, and then Jacob and Joseph are reunited. Jacob blesses Pharaoh. Jacob prepares to die, and then he blesses Joseph's 2 sons, and finally blesses his sons. And so a major portion of this last section is about Jacob at the very latter years of his life, blessing, and the idea of blessing. The questions we had last time, the table assignment here is, as a table group, how would you complete this sentence and quote, "We see Jacob as a man," and you guys actually, I'd ask you to write down a statement, and you turn those into me, and then, in the meantime, what I've done is summarized these statements. We had 3 groups, and all responding to the same question. We see Jacob as a man, ... Number 1, group 1, disappointed in his own performance, but came to understand that God would provide. Sound familiar? He also was a man who learned to appreciate his roots. I thought that was a very thoughtful, concise statement. That was based on, I can't recall which of the texts these all correlate to, but I thought that was thoughtful. Thank you for your response. Number 2, group 2, we see Jacob as a man who is ready to die in peace, ready to move on with hope. His faith had overcome his fear. Again, another thoughtful response. We think at our stage of life, we're able to see, the positives and the not so positives in Jacob's life, and we're able to interpret those things, and we see him as a man of faith, and that his faith in God had overcome a fear that was really a big part of his earlier life. Number three was a man. We see Jacob as a man who has sensitivity to a spiritual movement within his inner being. Wow. A spiritual movement within his inner being. He sees his place in history, which I thought was interesting. He sees his place in history. Why do you think, I really like that idea. For those of you who were in that group, how did you come up with that? He sees his place in history. He sees his place playing a role within a much larger context. Was that you guys?
Yeah.
A little more comment on that.
We're missing part.
Well, I think. No, you go ahead.
I know it was 2 weeks ago,
I
so
believe we had partly the blessings.
you had the blessings.
Part of
Yeah.
our-
Well, that would make sense.
There
then,
is
yeah.
that sense of history or that flow. I mean, he is passing along to his.
Yeah.
And it was also wasn't that he also said, my father Abraham bought the field bought the tree or whatever it is from.
Yeah.
And I want to be buried there, but and then he lists his grandfather, his father, he lists his wives all being buried there.
Yeah.
And he
Okay.
he saw, I think
That's
that was, someone saw that.
Sees the big picture.
Sees the big picture.
Yeah. And then, of course, you guys tied it in here. It makes sense. Sees his place in history as being more than just about himself. Blessing to Judah, and that you referenced that, his blessing to Judah.
Well, that he
Yes,
called
sir.
it the line.
Prophetic.
Prophetic.
The prophetic, yeah. The scepter shall not depart from Judah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Called him.
right? Which is an amazing story.
Yeah.
I just wonder, I just picture this of Jacob on his bed, and we would envision like a hospital room or a hospice setting, and all the sons are around, and he goes through, and he's actually released at a point where he can actually speak truth. He's not concerned about himself. His self is removed, and he's speaking what is really true. Not all of it is positive.
No.
It's not smoke and mirrors. It's the truth. Yeah.
Well, that was one of the points we brought up when we looked at this too. That he didn't say much when his 2 sons took out all those people,
Yeah.
but he did bring it out in his blessing
Yeah.
years later.
Years later. Yeah. He was clear about what he wanted. That's true of his, I think that was true of his entire life. It just got redirected. Early in life, it was a compulsiveness to take it, to take it. Whereas I think we all learned through what we studied, was that he was able to step back and allow God to move first as he got older. I do see a marked change in his life from after Genesis 32. He's not nearly. You could interpret that as passivity, but you can also interpret it as, what good is it going to do, and just allowing God. So anyway, the jury's still out. He was clear about what he wanted, steady in old age, transformed through time. Boy, I love what you guys wrote here. Finished strong. Yes, indeed, I think so. He had many powerful experiences, but yet maintained his humanity, not seeking recognition or power. And I summarized that last statement, but he didn't try to set up the Jacob evangelical power program or ministry.
Well, he didn't have any choice. I mean, his first goal and his ultimate goal was to receive his father's blessing, which, if you follow it back, is the blessing of Abraham, and to somehow capture it and make it his. And at the end of his life, he's in a foreign land away from where he's at. I mean, he's got to sit down and say, okay, Lord, what is this blessing again?
Yeah.
What exactly, how did you bless me?
He's scratching his head. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of like,
Boy, but it so fits with our life. Just turns out so different.
Listen,
My goodness.
you had been promised that you would come back
Right.
into the promised land, which goes into his wish to be moved back. And one of the things I was thinking about is that along that lines is that the blessing of Abraham, the covenant with Abraham, had been passed along to the firstborn sons, and the father always knew who
Yeah.
it was being passed to and how. And Jacob is the first one where God didn't say it's going to go through your firstborn son, right?
Uh-huh.
And his whole life was a struggle because he had
Taken.
usurped it from Esau. Well, it was Esau's fault, but anyway, but he had done that, and now here, God never told him, it'll be through this son that it will pass. And so I wonder, along the lines of you guys talking about knowing your place in history, if he understood that it would be that point from which the nation of Israel, which is named after him,
Yeah.
came to be.
Well, you also thought about how Joseph brought his two sons, and in this very, very his body not really there, he crosses his hands, and to have that insight, or whatever it was,
Uh-huh. With Ephraim and Manasseh.
to bless them,
Uh-huh.
the youngest, so the oldest again. That's a very interesting thing.
it's interesting, he had the insight or the foresight, or maybe God's sight, to take Joseph out of the picture. It's no longer, there's no tribe of Joseph.
Right.
Joseph has been removed from the picture. His two sons have replaced him. He saw that and did that. I thought that was interesting.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff. Okay, well, let's move on. Again, now table time. What we want to do is spend some time here. We've got about 20 minutes, but this is the overview graphic that we've looked at week after week, and we've looked at two large major parts in a man's life is this first half, second half. But I've taken the liberty to put in this I call it shades of gray right in here, life pushing in, and that's this time of descent is generally what comes first is this time, at least in our culture. There may be other cultures where that's not the case, but this is a time of life that's a real struggle, and we're learning to let go. And some of us may learn that faster than others. But life pushing in, and that's why I've got this. So there's ascent, there's this shades of gray, or life pushing in, and then this time of descent. We've looked at that. And what I'd like us to do this morning as a wrap-up is just tell stories to each other. And, you know, hopefully most of it will be true. Tell a story at your table. Let's tell a story to the others as you think about, you know, this overall graphic of life, these phases in our lives, about one instance from your life, just one instance, think about one instance, which has dramatically shaped the kind of man that you have become. And in so doing, we'll tie in our experience with Jacob's experience, and then we'll also give us an opportunity to get to know each other, even at a more personal level as we tell stories. So that's the way I'd like to wrap up this study, is telling some stories. So let's do that for the remainder of the time.